Berecry is our next speaker. Based in East Gippsland, Caitlin's a passionate angler and outdoorswoman. Having grown up on farms, Caitlin's connection to land and water was well established before the love affair with fishing began. And if she's not out fishing, you'll find her podcasting, writing and sharing fishing content online. Caitlin will be presenting on the work OzFish Unlimited are doing to help recover native fish populations through citizen science programs and habitat restoration. Please welcome Caitlin.
Geez, Gus, you could have adjusted the microphone down. Thank you for that lovely introduction. That's just lots of words to say that I have no life outside of fishing, so thank you for that. And before I get into it, no, your eyes are not tricking you. Yes, that is an Australian bass. It's not a mistake. They're a far superior sport fish to Murray cod, and that's a hill I will die on. I'll meet you in the car park outside. Perfect. So, as Gus said, I'm here to talk to you about the work that we do at OzFish Unlimited. So who are we? Right, so we are a Australian, nationally based not-for-profit charity where we activate wreck fishers to get involved in citizen science, and we work mainly on habitat restoration. So we've got projects happening in all states of Australia. I think we have about 112 happening at the moment. And I'm going to have a quick chat to you about what we do pretty much solely in the basin, but just before we get started, a lot of our work is driven by volunteers. So a lot of it is people just like you who care about fish habitat, and want to see fish and fish populations thriving into the future. So just a few stats on what we've managed in the last 12 months. So over 40,000 volunteer hours have been contributed by our members and our volunteers, and that's about literally 4.5 years worth of time in the last 12 months. So we genuinely have a lot of people that are behind this program. So what those people have been doing, they've improved over 174 different waterways. We've restored around 237 kilometres of riverbanks, and we've made them more fish friendly. I'll get it out in a second. And pretty much what our stats have shown us that in the last 12 months, our work has actually contributed to restoring homes for 1.13 million fish. So what that basically tells us is that habitat restoration is working. So really, what happened to habitat restoration? Why do we need it? So we know that 99% of our shellfish reefs are functionally extinct. They're gone, whether that is from water clarity issues, whether that is people have harvested them, they're gone, right? 85% of seagrass meadows also disappeared, whether that's been dredging or blackwater events. Well, not blackwater events, but you know what I mean, water quality. Millions of snags have been removed since the 1800s through the Murray-Darling Basin. We just dragged them all out, they're gone. It's estimated that there are over 10,000 barriers to fish passage in the Murray-Darling Basin still around today, and a lot of our riparian vegetation has been degraded. So that might be that we have access, like livestock have access to banks, whether that's erosion, whether that's we've changed the water course. So really the reality of it is that as humans, we've done a lot of damage to fish habitat, and we're seeing the results of that. So why do we even care about habitat, right? We're stocking over 10 million fish back into waterways. We're doing really good work. We're hearing about the resurgence of native fish, and we are doing really amazing work. But the long and short of it is that if we can start supporting the native populations and the wild populations of fish to be doing their thing, then perhaps in the future we won't necessarily be as reliant on stocking as what we are now. So we know that 1 hectare of that could have gone badly. 1 hectare of seagrass equals around 55,000 extra fish supported every year. So that could be 55,000 juvenile snapper, that could be 55,000 flatties in the Gippsland lakes. It's a big deal, 1 hectare, right? We know that 1 hectare of shellfish reef supports around 2.5 tonnes of fish. So these are a big deal, right? When we get over into the basin, and particularly in rivers, it's a little bit harder to measure because we don't necessarily have the quantitative data, but we sort of can guesstimate, and there is science behind it, but don't ask me, I'm just the chicken comms, that a 1 kilometre of healthy riverbank can actually support around 1,000 fish. So we've really dealt with 237 kilometres worth of fish, like we're literally creating fish habitat, 237,000 more fish. Cool. So that's great. That's all well and good. We know that more habitat equals more fish, right? But what we lose sight of is that in our heads we say, cool, cod live in snags, yellows live in snags, they could be doing this, they could be doing that. But the reality of it is that fish habitat is actually way more important than that, because it's not just homes for fish, it's where fish breed, it's where their food source comes from. And we think about Murray cod, we think about yellows, they're the big fish that we care about, but the reality of it is we're actually thinking about small-bodied natives as well. This is where our bait hides. This is where the small-bodied fish that either are endangered or are supporting the feed sources for our cod and yellows. It's all one big ecosystem, and the reality of it is that homes for fish is not just the ones that we like to catch. So, what can we do? And what we do at OzFish, and it's particularly what I think is really special, is we're actually activating people like you guys who are obviously passionate about native fish, because wreck fishers are actually genuinely citizen science in disguise. So I want you to put your hand up if you go fishing at least once a month. Guess what? You're all fishing frequently enough to be citizen scientists, because the reality of it is that you don't need a science degree, you don't need to have gone to university and learnt all about fish. You don't even need to be fishing that often. If you are out on the water and you're taking notice of your surroundings, so could be, what was the water clarity like? How many fish did I catch? Did I see snags in the water? Did I see bait species? What were the pest species like? The stuff that you and I are doing every time we go fishing is actually really genuinely interesting information that can back up some of the science that we need to push forward on some of these things. So what we do with OzFish is that we have chapters all around the country where people can join, and it's almost like a fishing club, but for fish habitat restoration. So people can join in, we'll have projects happening in your local area, and you can come along, volunteer your time and give back. Because what I know about wreck fishers is that we genuinely care about the fish in our systems, we care about the habitat, we care about our waterways, and most importantly, we care about having this as a resource for future generations. So a lot of the time we hear about really, really bad stuff like carp or blackwater events, or how much habitat degradation has happened over the last however many years, and it can be quite disconcerting, right? You sit there and you think, I'm one person, what can I do? And wreck fishers want to give back, wreck fishers want to get involved and support. They're literally the only thing that we love doing. So this is where OzFish comes in. So some of the stuff that we are working on in the basin at the moment, one of the projects that we've wrapped up recently is Andy back in the blue shirt. I'm going to direct all the questions to him, ask him the hard stuff. We re-snagged Lake Epilock. We were contracted to do 50 snags back into the water, and we actually delivered on 70. So there's now 70 new homes for fish, breeding, feeding, all of the above, happening in Lake Epilock. So what we basically did here, I say we, it was Andy, we gathered up all of this sort of dried up used timber that otherwise either would have just gone to waste or it would have ended up wood chipped, and we've actually dropped it back into Lake Epilock. And the really cool thing about this is that the science that Andy's actually used for this project hasn't been done anywhere around Australia. He developed this from his musings, and it's actually a really cool system where we know that this habitat is actually going to be better long term for fish. One of the other projects that we have worked on recently is what we're calling a pit tagging trial. So pit tags are basically like the same as your microchip for your dog or your cat, where we got some wreck fishers together. We trialled to see if they could safely install these pit tags into fish, with the idea being that when these fish that are tagged will swim past tagging points, there could be one happening in a lock or a weir or whatever it is, we'll get that data to say, we know that this fish travelled from here to here to here. The difference with this project was we literally just got everyday anglers like you and I to come in and learn how to do the tagging. Because what we want to show is that you guys are capable of doing this on your own. We don't need scientists, we do need scientists, no one sacked me for that. We do, but the reality of it is that if we can do this on a broad scale, with wreck fishers doing this work for us, we're actually going to make a lot of progress much quicker. So as you can see in the pictures here, we literally got a bunch of wreck fishers together in Swan Hill, Mildura and Denny, and we got them to pretty much prove that anybody can install these tags. So the idea is that once we have the results from these trial works, we can then take this to industry and say, cool, rec fishers can comfortably and accurately implant these tags, and we can start one of the biggest scale tagging programs in Australia. Some of the other things we do is a lot of fish emergency rescue. So you would have seen recently that there has been some blackwater events, obviously from flooding in the Murray River. One of the really cool projects that we've just wrapped up recently was the Murray spiny cray rescues that we did. So they obviously got pulled out of the river when there was blackwater events in summer of 2022-23. And literally within the last 3 months, we've been able to take those rescued populations and start putting them back into the river in Swan Hill. So that's really great work that rec fishers can get involved in, that you genuinely don't need a science degree, you don't need anything, you literally just need to come to us and say, cool, I'm keen to help out. So they did some work recently, I say recently, within the last 5 years, obviously in the Darling, when stuff was drying up in the drought, we relocate fish. The other thing that we do is we will collect fish and other things like mussels out of irrigation channels and relocate them back into waterways where they can actually be useful for not only rec fishers but for breeding populations. So this is the kind of thing that obviously we need rec fishers to be able to move quickly. So if you're interested and you're keen and you can sort of put up your hand and say, yep, I've got 2 days, I can come and help save populations, it makes a massive difference. So some of the other things that we do, and you will see over on the left-hand side there, we have the river repair bus. So we've actually got 3 of these happening in the Murray-Darling Basin at the moment. So these are pretty much, we call them buses, they're vans, they're great. And what we'll do is we'll come around, we'll collect up all the volunteers, and then we'll go and do habitat restoration as a group. So one of the main things that we've been doing recently is installing what we call fish motels. So you can see them in both of the slides here. Andy's got some not-to-scale models out on the OzFish stand, but pretty much what these are is they're homes for fish, right? So we know that Murray cod, yellers, all of our native species like snags, we know that they like to breed there. We know that they house the bait species, so pretty much what we're doing is putting those back into the river and giving them the opportunity to have a little home. So pretty much all it is, it's not all that glamorous. I've made it sound very fancy. We screw some sticks together and we jam them back in the water. But what it is here is that this is something that everybody in the community can get behind. We do this a lot with school kids because you're actually tangibly making something and then we're dropping that back into the system. So this is another one. And a lot of what we do is also riparian restoration. So it could be tree planting, it could be fencing to keep livestock off, it could be removal of invasive species. And I've got a picture of a willow here, and before everyone shouts me down saying willows are great habitat for fish, yes, they are. But the reality of it is that willows are actually drawing 2.5 times the water of Sydney Harbour out of our systems annually. So that doesn't sound necessarily all that much, but that's 2.5 Sydney Harbours that could be used as flows for our fish breeding or that could be housing more fish. So that is a big deal. But the one thing I wanted to just reiterate with you guys is that anyone can do this, right? And we need your help. The Murray-Darling Basin really needs a lot of work to get back to the glory days of what it used to. So we need guys like you who are already out here, you've taken up your Saturday, you're clearly already passionate about native fish. We need you to come and lend a hand, right? So even if it's 3 hours on your Saturday, just like you've done here today, come in, get involved. You can join up as a member via our website, sign on with your local chapter, and obviously come and join us at an event. So there's our website if you want. But what I wanted to leave you with, when I can get it to work. So this is a drawing from one of my favourite creators on social media. This guy is called Pet Paintings by Hercules. So the story behind this is that this bloke got bored one day in lockdown and he drew this portrait of his dog. Here's another one. I think we can collectively say that these are pretty god-awful, right? I mean, they're not great drawings. But the hilarious part is that this guy's actually raised over $750,000 for charity with his pet portraits. So what I'm getting at here is probably don't start drawing ugly animal drawings. But the reality of it is that you don't have to be special, you don't have to be overly skilled. You just need to have a crack, right? Because if this guy can raise $750,000 by drawings like this, we can probably put a little bit of work together to restore fish habitat. Ooh, that's it.